Welcome to the Torchlight Network. This is Dave Horwedel. The purpose of the Torchlight Network is to interview prominent business leaders to find out what they are doing that is successful in coping with COVID-19 and the resulting governmental regulations. Today we have Alec Hall from Dispute Defense Consulting. And first question I have for you, Alec, is what is Dispute Defense Consulting?
So the name came from the idea of defending merchants from disputes. Disputes is what the primary term is for chargebacks. And it covers a lot of faces. There's a lot of different ways that chargebacks come into play, from fraud to policy exploits, marketing exploits, a lot of dishonest practices, B2B, supply chain leveraging. There's a lot of different ways that you can incur a chargeback. And it's my job to make sure that merchants are protected as best as possible by developing a very strong defense against them.
Before we go on, I'd like to ask you, what is the definition of chargeback? Because I actually started my business before I'd ever heard of this.
A chargeback takes place after the cardholder files a dispute with their issuer against a merchant transaction. So that's when it turns into a chargeback, is when those funds get tied up and frozen, dependent on how the merchant defends himself and what the issuer determines the outcome is.
Now, does the chargeback apply to checks, debit cards, credit cards, or just credit cards?
Credit cards.
Okay, good. So in other words, if you can get a check, take it, or if you get a debit card, take it over a credit card.
Yeah.
Good. Also saves you a couple percent. Anyway, okay, good. So now, and how are you coping with COVID-19?
Well, as bad as it was, COVID-19 afforded me the opportunity to take my business into the East Base. For the past 8 years, I've been operating independently with only word-of-mouth marketing in the local. My market share was only local. And now, because of the shutdown that happened in March, we're in Las Vegas, so the March shutdown, it stopped person-in-person meeting, face-to-face meetings, and all that. And it really afforded me the opportunity to move into the East Base, into the social media. So it's been a tremendous blessing in disguise as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's a philosophy that says whatever a door closes, a door opens, or when you have a barrier, there's a freedom somewhere that you can take advantage of. So I heartily subscribe to that. Okay, so tell me, what should a person do in regard to chargebacks? How do they take advantage of your services, and what is the advantage to them?
So no matter what you're doing, if you're a business in operation and you're receiving chargebacks, you can use the chargebacks in order to paint a picture of where your weak points are in your company. So for example, if you get 20 chargebacks in a month and you realize that fraud is making it into your system, then you want to revamp on your fraud situation. If you're getting chargebacks that are considered friendly fraud, which actually the COVID-19 has, during the COVID-19 shutdown across the nation, we've seen a huge uptick in e-commerce volume as merchants move from in-store retail over into the e-commerce realm. We're seeing a huge uptick. I mean, that's expected. What we didn't expect to see was a disproportionately high number of fraud, and that came from dishonest customers taking advantage of the system. And what that is called is friendly fraud. That's called friendly fraud, where a good transaction and a fulfilled transaction is then disputed by the cardholder. So anyway, I digress. When you're setting up your defense, there's multiple steps in order to do it. You want to make sure the fraud doesn't get into your system. Any holes in your policies need to be fixed. You need to move forward with good solid employment of good solid policies. You need to make sure your operations are efficient and effective and accurate. And then after that, you just got to work on just making it more efficient.
Well, very good. And so how long have you been in this business?
Now I'm closing my 8th year, moving into my 9th. Yeah.
All right. And is there any other tips you would give your clients who might want to, take advantage of your services, or to somebody else who wants to set up their own business? Because it sounds like you've had a successful business for 8 years and you've actually managed to expand the business despite COVID-19. So any advice you might want to give to somebody else out there?
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you've got a dream, move towards it. So that's the first one. In regards to fraud, let me just tell you, out of the entire fraud prevention, you've got probably 30% of your prevention needs to be responsive, 70% needs to be proactive. That's another point. Another one to add is the fact that, say for example, one thing that a lot of merchants tend to overlook is the fact that when you have a loyal customer who spends 10, 20, 100 transactions with you, they're subscribed to you for 5 years. Cool. They're very loyal to you. They are a customer of yours, but they are also a customer to the issuer. So you need to understand that when these chargebacks come into play, the issuer, who is effectively the referee in the match between you and the cardholder, is on their side. They need to satisfy their customer in order to make their cardholder happy for longer. And whether you come or go, they don't care, because all the transactions are being taken care of between the issuer and the cardholder. So those are my points as far as fraud prevention goes.
Well, excellent. Well, those sound like very useful points. And if somebody watching, they decide they need some help on, fraud protection, I want to digress here for a moment, because it's an interesting thing that I've noticed that I found this in my own business. A lot of times you'll look at a chunk of income, say $100,000. They go, well, 3% of $100,000, not a big deal. It doesn't really, not a big deal. But if you had to spend $75,000 to get that $100,000, you have a profit of $25,000, and 3%, $3,000 is a lot more than 3%. So it's very wise that people, set up saying so, because that can make a big difference in, what your kid or your wife get to eat for dinner.
And to your point, sir, there is one more point that I want to make, and that is that fraud is not an operational cost. There is no it's not in a new line of products. You get no ROI on what is stolen from you through dishonest tactics.
Well, that's a very legitimate point. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.